get my shoes and out the door. 5, I'm alive. 6, 7, 8, feeling great.
Hello, BYWG Tribe. Here's a quick peek at our supplement, product, and book of the month for July 2020. At the end of the podcast, I'll spend a few minutes going into further detail, so we encourage you to listen to the end. The supplement of the month for July is our very own highly absorbable magnesium glycinate. The 10% discount code in office or online is MAG10. That's case sensitive, so it's lowercase MAG 10. Our book of the month is the Life Strengthening book by Deanna Ferruggio. The product of the month is the True Dark Company and their incredible list of blue light blocking glasses and their other products to, as they say, stop junk light. All the links, discount codes, and special offers for the product, supplement, and the book will be listed in the show notes in Apple Podcasts, post on the social media, in our weekly newsletter, and on our website at www.beyondyourwildestgenes at the Listen Now tab. Thanks, as always, for listening.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Beyond Your Wildest Genes podcast. I'm your co-host today, Dr. Michael Akinfora, and I am thrilled to have our good friend, Dr. Laura Foster, on the show today. Dr. Laura, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Laura's bio in front of me. I am going to read it and put it in this spot right here. Throughout most of my life, I've been the woman who has most felt comfortable sitting across the table, sipping coffee, having conversations that other people weren't having. To me, the message between the words was the part that I have always been most interested in, and somehow this became the thread that is woven through all my endeavors as a chiropractor, retreat leader, coach, speaker, and mom. For over 20 years, I have had the honor of adjusting thousands of individuals and their families at my chiropractic clinic. My clinic became the place where some of my earliest coaching experiences began, and was where I honed my ability to tap into the parts of ourselves that weren't being heard. With time, I took more to the speaking platform, wrote more of my own truths from my online community, and shared my teachings throughout workshops and retreats. My work is entirely with women who know they want more clarity, more grounding, more self-honoring, and more empowered actions. Women who feel inspired to get to the heart of what is holding them back from living their unique, one-of-a-kind life that reflects their deepest desires. I offer coaching, group mentorship, yoga, retreats, and online workshops. I look forward to connecting. But Laura has an amazing program that she's putting out in August of 2020, and it's going to be released on August 10th, called Reclaim Your Voice. But before we get into that, Laura, can you give people your background?
For sure. And first of all, I mean, we've known each other for many years because I also come from a chiropractic background. I've been in practice in Ontario, Canada for almost 25 years. And rather recently, I actually retired my voice. Retired my license so that I could use my voice to speak my truth with more authority, which is kind of an interesting thing. You and I can get into that in a moment. And as a result of some of the shifts and changes in my journey, I have taken a turn and really done a lot more coaching and a lot more retreats for women. I most specifically work with women, and it's been quite a journey.
That's amazing. Let's dive into that a little bit. So you were a hugely successful chiropractor for 25 years. We were part of the same program together. That's where we met, called the Ultimate Achievers Club, run by Dr. Patrick Dintempo. And what I've noticed since you've retired is your truly your own voice. Where, talk to me about that.
Yeah, it's interesting. You could tell I was fumbling there, and mostly it's because it's a rather new thing for me to say, because I just retired my license maybe even just 3 or 4 months ago, and it was rather impromptu. I adore chiropractic. It is my DNA at its core. The philosophy, my experience in it, had a large family-run practice in Newmarket, Ontario, and love it, and still have loved being a chiropractor. So I still consider myself a chiropractor, even though I retired my license. The reason that I let my license go is, number one, I was in transition. I moved to the West Coast of Canada, so I no longer owned my practice. But I do have the opportunity to set up here. The reason I retired is, with all that's been going on in the world, I felt restricted by my legislation around our licensing to be able to speak my full truth. And as some people know, some people may not know, is any registered health profession has regulations around what you can speak to, what you can't speak to, how you speak to it. Let's just say that there are a lot of parameters. And for me, for my own reasons, for my own calling, which I feel very strongly about, I had and have a message that I wanted to put out into the world. And I just felt with such deep desire that I needed to do it in a way that wasn't going to compromise my ability to practice or in any way get in the way of that. So, I sat down with my family and I really shared what it is that I wanted to share, how I wanted to share it. And they were fully behind me. They're like, you know what? That's the way the world goes. That's the way the universe delivers things. Sometimes you think you're heading in one direction for whatever reason. It all lines up and you find yourself making different decisions. And that's how it went. And so as soon as I started to kind of unleash my own voice, I could not believe how freeing it felt for me. I didn't even realize the things that I wasn't saying because of the way I was showing up in the world. And not that one way is right and one way is wrong, but for me, it wasn't in full alignment anymore with who I am. And I needed to shift that. And that's kind of where the whole retiring my license came about.
I realized, like, me practicing chiropractic down in the United States and you guys being in Canada, to me it was always the same or very similar. But where it really differs is what you can and cannot say. And having our good friend Wanda Lee as a partner, there are really certain things that we're not allowed to talk about having a business partner that is Canadian who has a chiropractic license versus down here what we're allowed to say. So I really understand that on a fundamental level. That I don't want to say it's a gag order, but you really you put your professional license on the line when you're stepping out and speaking your truth.
Yeah. And to be clear, I mean, I'm not talking about radical truths. I'm talking about vitamins. I mean, we're talking about the basics of fundamental health. And this is my opinion, but that's when I talk to people about it, they think, well, what radical things did you want to say? And frankly, it wasn't radical. It's not radical. And that's just that very much at its core, what you're speaking to is the truth. There are differences in different provinces and countries as to what you can say. In Canada, just imagine this, we're quite conservative.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you also, in knowing you, the time that I've known you, you've led retreats, and am I right in saying that you're an advanced yoga practitioner as well?
Yes, I'm an advanced yoga practitioner. I'm also a yoga teacher, which is something that I've done relatively, recently, which has been really great. And that has allowed me, I've always paired up with incredible yogis, and I've done these retreats in Canada, in the US, around the world. It's just something I love to travel. I love yoga, but also I really wanted to help women align themselves with their truth. So what I would have is I'd have this awesome yogi doing the experience of being on the mat, and then I would offer programs, little snippets every day, 60 minutes, 90 minutes, where we could start working on the fundamentals of creating more alignment, starting to create clarity about who you are and why you're here, removing the roadblocks to living the life that you're supposed to be living, and just allowing, well, frankly, I started off doing co-ed, and eventually I just started moving into working solely with women. I feel like that's really where my heart wanted to work, and I feel most aligned with that kind of work. So that's kind of how that all began.
That's awesome. So really the seeds for this were planted quite some time ago.
I would say about 5 years ago.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you're obviously you're smart because you did not include men.
Men would benefit from this work. I just feel like I'm not the person to bring it to them.
Men would benefit from the work, and I let Laura know before we started, and you could look her up. What is your social
Yeah.
soul? Go ahead.
Soul Inspired Gurl with a U is my Instagram, and it's also my website.com.
Yeah, and her social media presence has blossomed since this started 5 months ago, and I wanted to let her know that. And folks, you've got to check out her social pages because they're absolutely amazing. They really are soul inspired. So we'll have that in the show notes, of course, but it's what really, as a dude, it really spoke to me. And it is something that we really don't see a whole lot of out there in the world today, is helping women reclaim and refine their voice.
And I think even, it's interesting because you and I both know that's what I have recently, that's a program I've recently launched. And it's reclaim your voice, but it's also, reclaim your truth. I have noticed just being in practice, and in some ways, and you know this just from being in practice, you are already in the role of a coach or mentor on some level. And I really notice that a lot of times people don't feel the way they want to feel physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, because there is a disconnect between who they feel they really are and the life that they're living. And this to me felt like the missing link in a lot of ways. And so I would find myself, providing chiropractic care, but then I would find myself having these mini conversations all the time where we were planting seeds and creating a level of conversation that I felt was the real conversation to have. And it spawned this group that I started where it was, conversations I've always wanted to have with women. I always felt like there was the conversation you're having, and then there was the conversation you could be having. It was almost like the subtext. And so I just promised myself in practice that I would default to the conversation you could be having. So instead of going through the flowery talk, why don't I just speak to what I feel and see is real right before my eyes? And that was an unraveling and an awakening in people. And it really reflected back to me, but that those are the conversations we could be having all the time, that it was just a matter of choice. It was just a matter of leading in whatever imperfect action you were leading with to try and have the vulnerable, the authentic, the absolute truth. And not that you needed to be big and bold. You could be awkward and stumbling. It didn't matter. But as long as you spoke to that truth, you were having an entirely different experience. And I am so grateful from the perspective of working with practice members because they helped me practice that. They helped me see how that felt and looked. And it really is a lot of what spawned the kind of work that I'm doing right now.
So you pulled the thread, and here we are.
I pulled the thread, and holy cow, I did not realize what I was unraveling. Not even just in the women and the men that I worked with, but also within myself, because I started to realize, as much as I feel that I was living authentically, there's another layer, and there's another layer, and there's another layer. And, I'm just like everybody else. I don't do it perfectly, and frankly, it's not about being perfect, but it's about trying to create a level of intention with it and removing the roadblocks that get in our way. So wanting to have a collective, wanting to have a group where women could gather, be together, and me not necessarily be the leader, but me be the space holder. And this growing group of women, right now we're using a private face group as our platform, but that's where we're having different levels of conversations. And then once a month we get together and I do a free online meeting or a webinar on Zoom.
Yep.
And it's been wonderful. The group's been growing, and what I love is that I can see people showing up more authentically. And the minute that you lead with that, someone can meet you with that. And then you start to see how this is something I can do all the time. I don't have to just do it in the sanctity of this group, although that's wonderful. I can do that with myself. In all the times I've, let myself down or haven't spoke my own truth to myself, or I've edited my wishes and desires, and, just learning how to be real with ourselves so that we can show up and be more real with those around us.
Yeah, it's amazing once you're able to provide an environment that fosters, no pun intended, fosters growth, fosters authenticity, what really happens. And that's what I say, the miracles actually happen, that you actually are able to move mountains.
Yes.
Mountains.
Yeah,
mountains. Talk to me about a real life roadblock that you help remove in going through this, Laura.
One of the things that I notice is that in my work, a lot of people come to me because they want a shift or a change in something outside of themselves. In other words, they want to have a different career. They want to have a different relationship with their body. They want to have a different intimate relationship. They want friends that are more connected to who they are. So they, if you imagine yourself being in the hub of a wheel, they're looking outside to the ends of the spokes, and they're thinking about all these things that they would maybe like to have different, a different relationship to money, all these kinds of things. And for a long time, I used to work on that. We'd go outside and we'd go like, what kind of career do you want? And all these really important things. And what I noticed is that what a lot of us were doing is we were skipping over this relationship to self. So, skipping over our relationship to self to try and create a different relationship with something sometimes outside of ourselves or as an extension of ourselves, shall I say? Mm-hmm. And so one of the roadblocks is trying to create that without strengthening the relationship that we have with ourselves. And so that's where my whole work changed, as I started to back everything up. And in my coaching even, we really start exploring what is the relationship that we have to self. So a roadblock, I think, is that we think that relationship to self is less important than the relationship to the ways that we show up in the world. Mm. And we both know that the way we show up in the world is hugely reflective of the relationship we have with self. And so, just even creating the recognition, like the acknowledgement around that, and having women understand how valuable and important that is, and that that's really where it starts. And then as soon as you get the relationship to self right, the relationship to other things start to right themselves, shall we say. Or the work that we do in those relationships to other things, just becomes that much easier because the foundation and the platform is there, it's solid, and it's that, understanding ourselves, acknowledging our truths, knowing how to tap more solidly into our own intuition, otherwise our own truth, mm-hmm. and then having that align with the things that are outside of ourselves. That's a big one.
It's a huge one. And that is one of the conversations that I have on a daily basis with my female patients that come in, especially moms, is remember back when we were able to travel and we can get on a plane, and they would say, in an event that you're traveling with small children, put your safety mask on first.
Yep.
And this is a huge issue that I think that you address perfectly with Reclaim Your Voice.
Yes, it comes up. It is a platform issue, right? Like It's one of the things, and it's understanding. At the beginning of Reclaim Your Voice, we start off with understanding why our voice and our truth matters, and really looking at the origins of our relationship to speaking our truth. Mm-hmm. Because if you it's not about looking in the rearview mirror. It's just about acknowledging why we might have these unconscious or subconscious blocks to speaking our truth. Maybe we were rewarded in childhood for being a certain way, like the good girl, the quiet girl, the girl who didn't rock the boat, the girl that wasn't too opinionated. Or maybe we were negatively reinforced for the times that we did use our voice or speak up or those kinds of things. And just kind of spending a moment to go back in time and going, so why is it that I show up the way I show up? Because of course in our conscious minds, we don't think we have these relationships. But then when we start to peel back the layers, we go, oh, right, that's why I do that. And it's not to condemn ourselves or shame ourselves. It's just to acknowledge and to reframe how it is that we look at those things and then make a plan moving forward. So it's like, you kind of have to understand what your origin story is to realize where these blind spots are in the way that we go about living our lives, the way we process things, the filter through which we look at our own life and our events of our life.
I absolutely love it. Talk to me about some of the particulars of Reclaim Your Life. How long is it? What does it involve? Can any woman at any age do it? Talk to me about that.
For sure. It's a program intended for women or femme identifying people is what I definitely like to include. Mm-hmm. And it's a 21-day program that I structure in a way where I do 6 live webinars. You don't have to watch them live. I tell people you don't need to look at me. You can just download it and walk with it. You can just listen. And I do 6 lessons over 3 weeks. On kind of like a Monday, Thursday rotation. And in each lesson, I pick a big topic, just what we talked about right there, how your voice matters, really looking at the origins. And, I talk about things like courage and connection, and truth and belief, owning your voice. I talk about roadblocks. I kind of go through this whole process of looking at all the different pieces that come about when we want to more authentically speak our absolute truth, and to do so with more courage, more conviction, more confidence, less editing, less shrinking, less backpedaling. So the program kind of works into all the spokes of this, and I deliver the lesson, and then I sort of park it there, and you have an exercise that you can do on your own time that helps you integrate it and make it specific to you. And then I have a very active private Facebook group where we meet, and all the women that are in the group have an opportunity to share and connect. I become very active in that Facebook group, available to people for 21 days. So I do, small bits of coaching and so on within that group. And then all the materials stay there available for another 21 days past the time of the program, so that you can just take it and then start working it into your daily life and having those positive reinforcements, and then connecting back with me if you're stumbling in any way.
The amazing thing is, and like yourself, somebody I've always been, it is one of my top 5 values, interested in education, both learning and teaching, and I have taken a fair amount of courses where there are communities that are built around the course. So the course is really one thing, but the living entity becomes this private Facebook page. And that is really important. I know that you do a phenomenal job with that. And this is where the seeds from the seeds that are planted from Reclaim Your Voice, this is where the basically the fruit is out there.
It is. I have, every once in a while, I have someone that's so resistant to join. They're like, I don't like being on Facebook. I don't like putting myself out there. And of course, that's your option. But I so lovingly get about 99% of the people in there, because that is it. That's where the group is. Just me saying the information is just a starting point.
Yes.
But it's where the conversation is exactly what you said. It's the connection. It's seeing that someone else feels the same way you feel. And then you start to have a sense of, okay, I'm not alone. And then that process of everybody connecting, that's where all the good stuff comes from it. I'm certain of it. It's almost like I just start the conversation, and everybody else just continues it. And it's incredible, actually. I know that if you've been in those circumstances where you've been in the group, you know that really that's where actually the value really comes from it in a lot of cases.
We see this all the time with the advent of these CrossFit and CrossFit-esque gyms, where the real growth comes in community, and when you can provide that community with love and trust and understanding, this is where growth lives. This is where growth happens. And you're doing this exactly. Because anybody could teach a class and put it online, but it's really what you're striving for. What I'm hearing is that authenticity in reclaiming your voice that you provide, and that's amazing.
Well, and I guess at the end of the day, I mean, we're all walking a similar path, but a different path. And so, you know, when you teach something, I'm speaking to a couple levels of it. But when we get in the groups, that's when you start to see how it shows up in different ways. And I say to people all the time, to be really truthful with people, is this is not a public speaking course. This isn't you can use this to reclaim your voice, to put out your big, bold ideas in the world. But I think really where it shows up for most people is learning how to speak your truth to yourself. Because I don't know that we realize how many times we edit it, even to ourselves. And being able to kind of push that back and just be honest with ourselves shifts everything. And so to me, it's more of a self-honoring program. And I think the ripples of that will move out into the spokes of the wheel that I was talking about. And that's where it shows up in the work that you do in the world, the relationships you create, the intimate relationships, the social relationships, the way that you show up for yourself. And the way you show up for yourself is the way you have your own back. That's the important part, because at the end of the day, we all know this in our head, is we can only be responsible for ourselves. So being responsive to ourselves starts with really honoring what our truths are.
It is, number one, it is amazing that we have such a hard time with that concept, that what do I tell the kids? It's like your view of the world and how you treat yourself, how you show yourself to the world and how you talk to yourself, in order for you to live a good, healthy life, have to be really closely aligned.
They really do. I did not get that for the longest time. 51 years I've been here. I'm not sure when I learned that, but it wasn't very long ago. And I don't know, maybe it's because maybe we have been talking about it, but maybe I just haven't been hearing it. So for me, it feels like there's a level of rising, a level of, I mean, maybe that's a lot to do with what's going on in the world right now. It's this awakening, this peeling back the layers, getting really clear on what's important to us. I mean, I don't know about you, but the pandemic definitely said to me, that's no longer important. That's no longer aligned. That's no longer for you. What about this? How about that? You know, it was clarity for me. It didn't feel very good, but it's been clarity. And isn't that what we've been asking for? It's like we want a new level of living and consciousness. And then when it gets delivered, we're like, that's not really what I had in mind. That's not how I wanted it to come. That's not the wrapping paper I asked for. But, you know, and that's it. That's the short-term discomfort, what I think brings about the long-term ease. And I think we're in it.
We are absolutely in it 100%, and you nailed it on the head. I wasn't quite looking at that one. I wanted that one in that color. I mean, is that okay? And it's like, okay, so now, you know, it's the time. The timing's never been better to look at this and reevaluate. And I think there's a lot of that going on.
There is a lot of it going on. You know, even just when the world got quiet, our insides became very loud.
Mm-hmm.
right? You know,
Yes.
you couldn't push back the information that was bubbling up. And so I think that's partly why I've had so much enthusiasm around the groups and the things that I've been leading is mostly because women, people in general, want some place for this all to land, and to create more clarity and to have some level of acceptance around some of the discomfort that we're feeling, and a way to make sense of it, mostly.
Absolutely. And you know, when you look at where we are in the history of the world, there's never been a better time for women to find their voice. There's never been a better time for somebody like yourself and somebody like me, to have an online company where we can bring this. Because if we thought of this 20 years ago, it just never would have happened.
It's difficult. It would have been difficult, right?
Very difficult.
It's one thing to stand on a platform on a stage and say this, but it's a drop in the bucket. The online opportunity gives you a chance to connect, no matter where you are in the world.
It is absolutely true. My wife Denise, who adores you, would verify that in a second. What you're doing really speaks to women, and I wanted to share what you're doing with our audience today, because I think it is so important.
Thanks, Dr. Mike. I appreciate that you gave me the opportunity to share my truth.
Absolutely. So, I'm very cognizant of your time, Laura. What would you like to say before we part ways today?
Well, at the very least, I wanted to say thank you. These are the conversations that I love having with men too, and I would love for as many women to join us. The program launches on August 10th. Where at the time of the broadcast of this podcast, registration will be open. I know you'll link that in the show notes.
Absolutely.
And if it doesn't speak to you right now, I would just love for you to reach out to me on social, and we can have a conversation on there because that works for me as well.
Laura, what's the website again?
The website is soulinspiredgurl.com.
Soul, Soul, inspired
Gurl,
Gurl.com.
Correct. And
Okay.
that's also my social.
Awesome. So we will include all that in the show note, folks. Laura, thank you so much for coming on the show. I tried to catch up with you, and then I got the coronavirus, so that kind of went out the window for a while. But I really appreciate everything that you're doing. It is I'm thrilled to call you a friend, and thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Great. Hey guys, if you like what you heard, please go to iTunes or Google Podcast, leave a review so that people can find what we're doing and bring it out to the world. We really appreciate it. And we will talk to you soon, guys. Thanks. Ciao.
Our July supplement of the month is BYWG's magnesium glycinate. Magnesium is one of the most common deficiencies in current research and is a critical part of over 200 processes in the human body. Magnesium supplementation is suggested for many people and can be especially helpful for improved sleep, improved mood, muscle cramping, bone density, and so much more. This form of magnesium, magnesium glycinate, is well absorbed and less irritating to the digestive system, so it is the preferred form to other forms. Others can cause disaster pants when taken in the dose that is recommended. For the entire month of July, if you use the code MAG10, case sensitive, lowercase MAG10, you will receive 10% off this incredible mineral. You can pick it up at our website at www.beyondyourwildestgenes.com, or if you're local, you could pick it up at the office and just mention the code. The July book of the month is the Life Strengthening book by Diana Ferrugia. Dr. Mike had the honor to interview the author for the Beyond Your Wildest Genes podcast. Listening to this podcast is an awesome way to get a feel for the author and this incredible book. You can listen in at our website at www.beyondyourwildestgenes.com at the Listen Now tab. Our product of the month for July is True Dark, an incredible company with many products focusing on stopping junk light. True Dark's premium eyewear helps you manage your light exposure so you can sleep, feel, and live better. They also have special light bulbs, flashlight, night light therapy devices, and other products to help biohack your health. Personally, I have the flashlight and I have two different types of true dark glasses. One to wear right before bed that, if you like music, makes me just look like Bono, and another more stylish pair for regular wear that makes me look like, if you're a Marvel fan, Tony Stark. You can check out all these products at the links provided below. Thanks for listening.